Okay, listener, thank you so much for sharing these really powerful excerpts from Focus on You Until You Win.
They certainly make you think.
They really do.
Yeah.
As you said, these sources, they just cut right to the chase, don't they? They challenge some really common ideas we have about change and, success. You know that feeling, right? That sense of just waiting.
Oh, definitely.
Waiting for the perfect time, or maybe waiting for someone else to step up, or I don't know, waiting for the cavalry to ride in and fix everything.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap.
It's so easy to feel stuck, like your life's on pause, completely at the mercy of outside stuff or other people.
Absolutely.
Well, in your deep dive today, we're going to crack open these specific excerpts you sent over because, honestly, they just throw that whole waiting idea right out the window.
And our mission here really is to unpack the core message that's coming through in this material. It's a truth that, it can feel a bit uncomfortable at first glance.
A little bit jarring, maybe.
Maybe. But ultimately, according to these sources, it's meant to be incredibly empowering. We're diving into where the real power for change actually is, and the title gives a pretty big hint.
Right.
And more importantly, how this material suggests you can actually harness that power. We want to pull out those, practical nuggets for deliberately building the life you want, but starting from the inside out.
Exactly. So get ready, because the material you gave us, it covers some really fundamental themes. We're talking about that stark truth about self-reliance, all the way to the nitty-gritty power of just being consistent.
Day in, day out.
Yeah. And the absolute need to ignore all the noise, all the distractions in our world today.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And then facing the reality of pushing through challenges when things get tough.
Inevitable challenges.
And finally, that sense of freedom and, power that comes from really owning your own path. It's straight talk, no doubt about it.
It is.
And honestly, some of these insights, especially when you line them up like this from the sources, they might actually surprise you. So let's dive into what you shared.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the sources you gave us, they kind of hit you right away with this central, maybe even, like I said, jarring idea. It's presented as this fundamental truth that most people just miss. Quote, "There is a simple truth most people ignore. Nobody is coming to save you."
Pretty blunt.
It is. The material just lays it out there.
Yeah.
Your life only really starts changing the day you decide consciously to put your energy where it matters most, on you.
And what's interesting is how this isn't just, a catchy phrase. The source frames this as the foundational truth. It's like the bedrock.
Okay.
It says every single dream, every goal, basically the entire future you want, it all hinges on your willingness to focus on yourself.
Right.
And it's very specific about the conditions, without distractions, without excuses, and without waiting for permission. It's positioned as the absolute non-negotiable starting point. Everything else seems to flow from that one idea.
And it really sets up this stark contrast, doesn't it? Between that internal focus, that self-mastery, and the way we often operate, waiting or blaming external things.
Exactly. The source is explicit. Winners, according to this material, do not do that.
It says, quote, "The world rewards those who master themselves, not those who blame, not those who wait."
Which is a powerful reframe. It basically suggests that looking outside yourself for the solutions or for validation or for rescue, well, by this definition, that's just not the path that leads to the win it's talking about.
Okay, so if that's the starting point, except that nobody's coming, the power is internal, then the big question is how? How do you actually do that, put that focus into practice?
Well, the sources move pretty quickly from the why to the how. They state pretty clearly you have to focus fully on building your strongest self every day.
Every single day. Why the emphasis on daily? That seems intense.
The material is quite clear on this. It argues that taking days off from, let's call it the work of building yourself, it actually compounds against you.
Okay, so it's not just neutral.
No, it paints this picture where you're never really standing still. You're either actively building the life you want, or, as it puts it, you're drifting further into the life you don't.
Wow.
And the sources suggest the main reason most people don't achieve what they set out to is precisely because they don't maintain that focus on themselves long enough. There's a huge emphasis on the cumulative power of that daily, often seemingly small effort.
And it's not just about thinking about getting stronger or having good intentions, is it? The source seems really focused on action.
Absolutely. Unequivocally about action. It gives these really concrete, almost mundane examples of where this daily focus happens. Like 1 hour of reading instead of scrolling, or one workout instead of making excuses. Even something as simple as saying no to junk food.
Right. those small choices.
Exactly. They aren't these huge dramatic gestures, which I think is important. They're presented as the moment-by-moment decisions, the little choices that build your strongest self brick by brick. It kind of makes this huge goal feel more manageable, through those small, consistent actions.
Okay, brick by brick. That leads perfectly into the next point, which the source calls out specifically. Consistency.
Yes, it says consistency is the real secret.
And it acknowledges, look, consistency isn't always glamorous. It's not always fancy or exciting day to day. Often it's just showing up, doing the thing.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Especially when you don't feel like it. But it stresses. It is powerful and it works. The commitment, according to this material, is simply about that daily appearance, whether you feel like it or not.
Right.
And that act, doing the work even when motivation is low, that's what builds this deep internal self-respect.
Oh, yeah.
It's described as this kind of unsexy superpower that often gets overlooked. The unsexy superpower. I like that. Okay, so you're committed. You're building yourself brick by brick every day, focusing inward. But let's be real.
Yeah.
We live in a world that feels like it's designed to just constantly yank your attention away. So how does the source suggest you handle that? That relentless pull from the outside.
Yeah.
It mentions training your mind to ignore all outside noise.
Yes, and it's really important to unpack how the material defines this noise, because it's actually broader than just, say, loud sounds.
Okay.
It includes the obvious external stuff, other people's opinions, distractions, negative comments, gossip, jealousy, comparing yourself to others.
All that stuff.
All that stuff. But it also includes the internal chatter, anything essentially that is trying to steal your future from you.
Wow, steal your future. That's strong language.
It is. The source makes a very strong case that your attention isn't just passive. It calls it sacred. It says your attention builds your life. So where you choose to direct your focus is literally constructing your reality day by day.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. If your attention builds your life, then protecting it becomes incredibly important.
Yeah.
But there's so much competing for it. How do you even decide what's worth paying attention to and what's just noise?
Well, the source offers a really sharp filter for this. Almost ruthless, you could say.
Okay.
It says, if it does not push you closer to your vision, it is noise. If it does not help you grow stronger, it is noise. If it drains your energy instead of building it, it is noise.
So it's an active test to apply.
It's an active filter for everything vying for your attention. Is this building me up towards my vision, or is it tearing me down or distracting me?
That's a clear boundary.
Very clear. And the material expands this idea to cutting out distractions more broadly, which it literally calls thieves of your future.
Thieves. Okay.
This covers the obvious external ones we all know: endless notifications, pointless news feeds, mindless scrolling.
The usual suspects.
Right. But it also really highlights the internal distractions: self-doubt, overthinking everything, worry, fear.
The inner noise.
Exactly, that internal static that steals your mental energy and focus. The source argues these are just as damaging, maybe even more insidious than the external ones, because they stop you from applying that sacred attention to building yourself.
So it's not just about having more willpower in the moment to resist scrolling. It's about proactively creating an environment, both inside your head and outside, that actually supports your focus.
Precisely. The source talks about practical steps: setting clear work times, being aggressive about turning off notifications, even physically arranging your space to minimize interruptions and make focus easier.
Right.
It really hammers home the need to be ruthless with protecting your focus, because the way the material frames it, your future literally depends on it. It's that critical.
Ruthless focus. Okay. Following this path, intense self-focus, daily consistency, filtering all that noise, it sounds incredibly demanding.
It is.
And the sources you shared, they don't sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
They talk very directly about the challenges that you will face, like having to fight for your dreams when no one believes.
Right. And what's really insightful here is the perspective the source offers on that lack of external belief. It doesn't say your job is to go out and convince everyone. No. It states pretty clearly it's your responsibility to believe in your dream, not theirs. It frames this whole fight for your dreams as often being kind of lonely, mostly an inner battle.
An inner battle against what?
Against things like doubt, fear, and just the powerful, comfortable pull of staying where you are, the status quo.
Yeah, that comfort zone is strong. And the material also acknowledges that point we all hit, that moment when the idea of quitting seems easier.
Oh yeah, that moment.
The source says this isn't just like a fleeting weak moment, it's often the critical turning point where futures are decided. It's like the fork in the road.
Exactly. The point where the path splits between those who ultimately get there and those who, well, don't.
So what separates them at that point, according to this material?
The sources argue that success, by their definition, belongs to those who find a way to keep moving when every part of them wants to stop.
Keep moving even when it hurts.
Right. Pushing harder isn't about pretending the pain or difficulty isn't there. It's about accepting that pain is actually an inherent part of the process. Seeing a wall isn't necessarily a sign to stop, but maybe a challenge to overcome or even an indicator of progress.
An indicator. How so?
Well, there's this really intriguing idea presented that feeling like you want to quit that point of maximum resistance can actually mean you're closer than you think to a breakthrough.
Huh. Like the darkest hours just before dawn kind of thing.
Something like that the biggest struggle often comes right before things shift.
Okay, but what about when you actually do stumble? When you fall flat on your face?
Mm.
Because, it happens.
It absolutely happens. And the sources are very direct about this too. They offer a really crucial distinction.
It just...
Falling is not failure. Staying down is.
That's a key difference.
It raises this whole question of resilience and how the source defines it. Rising again isn't just about physically getting back up or metaphorically dusting yourself off. It's presented as the true measure of strength.
The act of getting back up itself.
Yes, it's that conscious choice not to let the hurt or the setback or the doubt actually stop you. It's about actively choosing to rebuild your courage. And through that very action of getting back up, you prove something powerful to yourself.
What's that?
That no matter how rough it gets, you can ultimately count on yourself. It reframes those falls from being defining failures into being essentially training sessions for resilience.
Training sessions.
Okay.
So moving into the sort of long game of this whole journey.
Yeah.
The sources bring up another really critical idea. Taking full ownership.
Complete ownership.
It says you must own your life without blaming anyone for anything.
Now, if we connect this back to that very first point, nobody is coming to save you, the source's present blame, as fundamentally giving away your power.
How so?
Think about it. When you blame others, you hand them control over your life. Because as long as the problem or the obstacle or your situation is someone else's fault,
then you can't fix it.
exactly. You've basically made yourself powerless to change it. Owning your life, on the other hand, is about taking full responsibility, not in a harsh, self-blaming way, but because that is precisely where the power lies.
The power to change things.
The power to make new choices, starting right now, today. It's about looking at disadvantages not as excuses that stop you, but as raw material you can use to build strength, turning failure into training, like we just discussed.
Okay, ownership is power.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And that idea of ownership must tie directly into those periods, the words, where you're putting in the work. You're being consistent, you're filtering the noise, but the results, they just aren't showing up yet.
Right, the invisible phase.
Exactly. The sources address this head on. They talk about the absolute necessity of trusting your process, even when results are invisible.
And this is often the hardest part, isn't it? This is where patience gets really tested,
Yeah.
where doubt loves to creep back in.
For sure.
The source uses this great analogy of a seed. It reminds you that the most crucial growth often happens completely unseen under the surface long before anything breaks through the soil.
So you just have to trust it's happening.
You have to trust it's happening. Trusting your process means believing in the unseen. It means having faith that the effort you're consistently putting in is building something valuable, even if you can't point to tangible external proof just yet.
Okay.
The sources really emphasize that effort invested in your own growth is never, ever truly wasted, even during those quiet, seemingly unproductive, invisible seasons.
That's encouraging. Okay, so finally, to keep going on this intense, self-driven journey, the sources really underscore the need for a North Star, right? A clear destination pulling you forward.
Absolutely. You have to stay linked in on your vision until you win.
Locked in, not just thinking about it sometimes.
No, the vision, according to this material, needs to be more than just a vague wish. It has to become a force that's actually stronger than your emotions, stronger than your daily ups and downs. It's your guiding force.
All right.
It's not passive. It needs to be active, deliberate, and fiercely protected. The source says you must refuse to let anything outside of you dilute the vision inside of you.
Refuse to let it get diluted.
Yeah. This focus isn't dependent on things being easy or on getting pats on the back. It's presented as non-negotiable, something you stay committed to, not just until it gets hard or boring or lonely, but, well, like the title says, until you win.
Right, until you win. So, okay, let's take a step back. Looking at all the material you shared, The core message seems crystal clear. The power to change your life, it's inside you, full stop.
Nobody else comes.
Nobody's coming.
Yeah.
And tapping into that power requires this relentless, daily, consistent focus on building yourself up,
Brick by brick.
while also diligently, ruthlessly cutting out all that noise, external and internal, that's trying to steal your focus.
Right. Protecting that secret attention.
Then, pushing through the doubt, the fear, the moments you want to quit. Because falling isn't failure. Staying down is.
Owning it all.
Taking full ownership of your path, no blaming, trusting the process even when you can't see the results yet,
Believing in the unseen.
and staying absolutely locked in on your vision until you reach it. That seems to be the roadmap laid out here.
That's a great summary of the core themes in these excerpts. And circling back to that title, Focus on You Until You Win, the sources offer this really profound twist on what that win actually means in the end.
Oh, what's the twist?
Well, they suggest that maybe when you look back after the journey, you realize that winning was not even the real prize.
Okay, so what was?
The real prize was who you became in the process. The internal transformation that happens because of the struggle, because of the consistency, the ownership, the resilience, that change within you, that's presented as the ultimate reward. The person you build.
Wow. Okay, that is something really interesting for you to think about, listener. Based on the material you brought us today, here's a thought to really mull over. If, as these sources strongly suggest, the real prize isn't the trophy at the end, but truly who you become through that whole demanding process, focusing on yourself, fighting for the dream, pushing through, owning it all, trusting the unseen work.
Yeah.
Does that fundamentally change how you look at setbacks? Does it maybe lessen the crushing weight we often feel from needing external validation? Does it maybe even redefine what winning actually means to you in your own life, right here, right now?
It shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It really does. Consider the person you are actively building today. Through those small, consistent choices you're making, whether or not the big results are visible yet. These sources imply that that person, the building of that self, might just be the most important focus of all.
A powerful idea to end on.
Definitely. We hope this deep dive into the material you shared has sparked some thoughts, given you some practical insights, maybe a new perspective to consider as you move forward on your own path. Really think about these ideas, how they might resonate, and how they could apply to the daily actions you're taking right now.